Oh, I thought we were on. I'm sorry, I didn't know we weren't on before, right?
No, we're going to be on in a second. Where are you? Los Angeles?
Los Angeles, yes, Santa Monica.
Nice.
Pleasure to meet you.
Yeah, likewise. This is UMAR AHMED for IFL TV in association with MTK Global via Zoom. I'm joined by ESPN's Mark Kriegel from Los Angeles. Mark, how you doing?
I'm well, thank you. Pleasure to meet you.
Yeah, likewise, Mark. So you broke a story, I think a couple of days ago now, regarding Fury and Joshua. And we've learned since then that NDAs have been signed by both parties. Is that correct, Mark?
Well, to my understanding, it's 3 or 4 parties. It would include Top Rank. It would include Queensberry. It would include MTK. And also Eddie Hearn's concern as well.
Yeah, when I said both parties, I meant both sides. So, of course, we know with
all
Tyson,
sides. There are a lot of sides in this, UMAR.
Definitely. We know with Tyson, there's 3 sort of entities involved with Frank Warren, Top Rank, and MTK. And, of course, with Joshua, a bit more simpler with just Matchroom and Eddie Hearn. So, talks have begun. Potential offers are being made from Saudi Arabia to MTK. Is that all correct, Mark?
Yes.
How realistic is it you think we get that fight next, considering the pandemic we're in at the moment, and also the fact that we've got contract signed from Pulev's side to fight Joshua and from Fury's side to fight Wilder?
I can't answer your question on the pandemic side because that's a separate issue. You're going to need testing. That's something else. I do think, however, the pandemic creates even more pressure for this to happen. And there was a substantial amount of pressure before the pandemic. Promoters are going to want to make up for their losses. No one's making any money during the pandemic. So I think when we get out on the back end, you're going to see fights that you would not have seen, or you will expect fights that weren't necessarily likely before the pandemic, because people are going to want to make up for the money. The question of how likely it is, it all depends on how much the offer from the Saudi concern is. And if there are any other competing offers from other countries in the Middle East as well. I understand that everyone says they have contracts now, but this is boxing. And as you know, what speaks more than box office is money. And ultimately, what that number is, the number they get back from the Saudi promoters, will determine how they proceed. The idea that they've signed NDAs means to me that this is not a BS story. It's a real story. And everyone can deny all they want. I understand that Fury and Wilder have a contract. It's Wilder's prerogative to fight. He exercised it immediately. I understand why he would want to. But he would have his own concerns, and he would make, in theory, more money from stepping aside than from not stepping aside. Well, I mean, you get money to do, in theory, you get money to do nothing. Pulev is a much more problematic concern. You're supposed to fight in June, was it?
Correct, yeah.
Joshua. And he's been waiting for a long time. I mean, he's made almost a career out of stepping aside. He's gotten screwed from the IBF or stepped aside more times than he cares to remember at this point. I don't think that is insurmountable. If you offer him a reasonable guarantee, if MTK appeals to him and says, hey, listen, we need you to do this. Remember, he's also promoted by Top Rank. If Top Rank has a big enough financial interest, they could say, listen, Kubrat, we understand what your concerns are. Once again, we will have to make it up for you on the back end. Going back to Wilder for a moment, I don't mean to skip around. There are a couple of unknowns. He's never lost before. What is a guy like after his first loss? I understand he wants to get it back. I believe he is a real warrior. But what's your head like really behind closed doors? He has been injured. We learned recently, or relatively recently, that he's coming off surgery. Do you want to go right back into Tyson Fury after that? Third, there are concerns by his own admission, with his corner. It is in a state of flux. I don't know if anyone knows exactly what that corner is going to look like. So in the interim, would it not seem rational to get a whole bunch of money, to step aside, to bide some time, to accustom yourself to your surgically repaired bicep, to your first knockout loss, and to potentially your new corner? Now, those are all reasonable things. It doesn't make him any less tough to step aside, but there are, those are perfectly rational considerations. But again, the only thing that really matters right now is the number that comes back from the Saudis, because it's going to have to be lucrative enough to pay Wilder to step aside and pay Pulev to step aside. However, if you're going to get about 60 million bucks, as Mike Coppinger cited a figure the other day in The Athletic, you're going to get $60 million site fee for FuryJoshua. What the hell would you get for this? I mean, how many more times valuable is this fight than that? So before everyone poo-poos it, think about what that fight would be worth. I don't know. I'm not a businessman. If I was smarter, I'd be doing something else. But
Mark, there's a lot of things there that you said I want to touch back upon later on, but let's just establish something first. So in the report that you put out, you mentioned Saudi Arabia, and I think you mentioned Qatar as well. Is that correct?
I said there were other places.
Right. Okay. I
did not mention Qatar.
Okay.
Right. I wouldn't think that you're incorrect. But
all right. So we know there's various, let's say, territories in the Middle East making approaches to MTK about this fight. How much have talks developed? Because this story really gathered pace, because we knew Saudi Arabia, the Middle East, was going to be an option, but we hadn't really heard there was talks going on. Firstly, how long have these talks been going on, and are they developing, these talks, from what you know?
Months, and yes.
Months?
I believe so, yeah. I mean, look, it depends how you parse these words. Talks, negotiations. I knew that there were several people I talked to took umbrage at the term negotiations. I don't know how you parse it legally, but it's boxing. People talk. And the only thing that, I hate to use the cliche, but in the end, money will talk the loudest and the most definitively. Nothing is really, everything is conceivable, everything is in play, but until you get a firm number back, and I don't have that, you can't proceed rationally. If the number is no good, and the number from the other suitors are insufficient, then you'll go on with the scheduled fights after the pandemic. If the number blows you away and then it's guaranteed, again, by smarter people than me, now you got something that's real.
In terms of location, I spoke to Bob Arum. He also mentioned the possibility of Macau, China, being involved with this fight, and he said that Top Rank are talking to them. Have you heard anything on that front, Mark?
No, but Bob said it, so Bob said it. I mean, look, I think that you're coming out of something that's unprecedented. But I also think that all the parties are incentivized on the back end of this pandemic, whenever this is, to maximize the money. I mean, look, under the best of circumstances, they're incentivized to maximize the money. But I think the situation becomes more urgent now. People are really going to care only about the bottom line.
Let's talk about Deontay Wilder, because the general consensus seems to be that if he steps aside, as you said, Top Rank can kind of convince Pulev to step aside, and he's done that before in his career. So let's talk about Deontay Wilder, which seems like the biggest stumbling block from FuryJoshua happening next. Do you think it makes logical sense in terms of the financial incentive, and also if he can get something written up in the contract where he says he has a shot at the winner for all 4 belts next year? That does seem like a very logical argument.
I don't think, and perhaps I'm remiss in not mentioning this earlier, but Deontay's a true fighter. I don't think that there's any question that he would sign up for this if he weren't guaranteed the winner and his rematch. Don't misunderstand me. I'm not saying that he would step aside for the sake of stepping aside. He would only step aside for this. This is me talking, but it is rational. I think that he would only step aside for time, to buy himself some time, figure out where he is, not an irrational consideration, and some extra money. So what I would think is rational on Deontay's end, if he wants to do this, and he might just want to say, I don't care, I'm not going to entertain any offer at all. You give me that guy right now. And the same force of ego that got him to where he was the night of that fight will deliver him back. That's a possibility too. He doesn't want to listen to anyone or anybody. But human nature being what it is, I'm in a new situation. If they're going to give me, if I'm going to buy myself some time and get some money to figure out where I am and come back as a more effective fighter, as long as I get those two guys on the back end. And if this deal makes it more likely that I can fight the both of them, then I think you got something. But I don't think that Wilder would agree, knowing Wilder as I do, to the extent that I do, I don't think Wilder would agree to a damn thing if he didn't get big fights on the back end of this, if you weren't guaranteed those fights on the back end, starting with the winner.
Of course. Mark, we know this is a unique situation where two Brits hold all four belts in the heavyweight division. How big, though, is this fight in America? Because Joshua and Fury are absolutely massive over here, arguably the two biggest sportsmen, let alone boxers, in this country. How well known are Anthony Joshua and Tyson Fury in America, Mark?
Anthony Joshua less so. I think that it's germane that as far as America is concerned, he failed in his debut on the biggest stage. In Madison Square Garden, he got knocked out after all that hype. Fury is a bit different. You know, I've done so many stories on television and print and on Fury that he's a little bit of a different creature. I was doing a radio show with a New York station the other day, and the host, and a lot of these guys, unlike you guys, are goddamn oblivious to boxing. But he said to me, I got back into it because of Tyson Fury. And to my mind, Tyson Fury is almost as a conception. His sensibilities are American. He loves Vegas. He loves putting on a show. He loves being the center of attention. He doesn't believe in false modesty. He's a showman. And curiously enough, to me, I remember being in Sheffield in, I don't know, 99, I think it was, thereabouts, at the start of Nassim Hamed's coming to the States on HBO. And I thought that Hamed really started that he was the first British fighter to look to America and say, I don't believe in this sort of false modesty. I want to go to America and really sell myself. So I think that and I don't mean to go too far away from your question, but I think that what Nassim started, you see its ultimate expression in Fury. So I think that, to answer your question in a very long-winded way, I apologize. That's right. That Fury is really the ultimate expression of that, the Brit coming to conquer the States and not being shy about it at all. I mean, look, Fury said he likes fighting in Vegas better than anywhere else. Again, the money would have to be enough for him to fight in Saudi. But he also prides himself, listen, I'll fight in mine shafts, I'll fight, in pubs, wherever, like my ancestors. I think he's serious with that too. But he loves Vegas and he loves America.
I asked that question because, just out of pure interest, how big is that fight just in America? I'm talking about Fury Joshua.
It's big, it's huge. We would hype the hell out of it. But it's not as big in the States as it would be in the UK. I mean, you guys are better boxing fans than we are, plain and simple. And I think that's been something for Americans to get accustomed to over the last decades. I mean, Americans rely on fighters from the UK now, and they rely on fans from the UK. I mean, I was there the night that Carl Frampton won in Brooklyn, and it was effing extraordinary. You know, it was amazing. I still, you know, even though he got knocked out, I've never seen fans the way I've seen fans for Ricky Hatton against Mayweather. The way guys came in and camped out at the MGM for an entire week. And the fact of the matter is, they're way more passionate fans than most Americans. Simple. And any promotion in the States, any potential promotion in the States, would rely on, you know, fans from the UK coming over.
Mark, we know that ESPN are a pro pay-per-view platform for certain fights. DAZN, the whole existence of DAZN is that it's non-pay-per-view, the whole model. Right. In the UK, it should be okay. Sky and BT, both pay-per-view platforms. FuryJoshua, no worries. In America, how's that going to work with DAZN and ESPN?
Again, I think that the money's big enough to find a way. You know,
it'd be an issue.
Listen, Don King and Bob Arum could do business back in the day. No one hated each other more than those two guys. You know, it all comes down to what's in the pot. You know, Arum and Heyman could do business. Again, the question is, what's in the pot? Is it big enough to make my rival, or in some cases my enemy, my friend? Is it big enough to forge temporary alliances? That's the number that will determine everything. And it's not necessarily from Saudi, it's from the other, you know, the other promotions too.
Last question, Mark. From that story you did, what would you give a percentage chance that FuryJoshua happens next? $1 million question.
If I were a bookmaker, you'd be calling me in Vegas. And I don't know. I really don't know. I mean, you can think about it rationally and like do the math. And I'm not avoiding a question, but I'd be crazy to put a number on it. But here's what I come back to. If Ruiz Joshua is 60 million in Saudi, what the hell is FuryJoshua? Now, if you can give me a rational answer to that, if you can give me the number, say 200, 150, 100, I don't know. You give me a number on that, I'll get you a ballpark percentage. How's that?
I'd say $150 million is around the right mark.
So let's say you get 150 million, right? Do you think that's enough to pay out Pulev and Wilder?
You'd imagine so. And there's the answer. Mark Kriegel, thank you very much for talking to IFL TV. Wish you the best for the rest of lockdown, but hopefully see you soon, whether that's me coming to the States or you coming to the UK. But yeah, thanks for your time and God bless.
Take care, Omar. Stay safe, buddy.
Thank you, Mark. Cheers.